Good evening, and welcome to the 15th Ohio Congressional District Debate. My name is Evan Wilkoff, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Operations for Ohio University Event Services and Baker University Center. Ohio University seeks to provide opportunities for learning and the free exchange of ideas, including events such as this one. In keeping with this goal, an opportunity for question and answer with a speaker will follow today's formal presentation. In the interest of ensuring an orderly event, audience members are asked to refrain from engaging in conduct that could disrupt the event. Anyone engaging in disruptive behavior will be subject to removal. If disruption occurs, a series of 3 warnings will be read. If the disruption warrants a 3rd warning, the event will be temporarily suspended until order has been restored and the disruption has been stopped. Now, our University President, M. Dwayne Nellis.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. It's an honor and privilege to welcome to Ohio University the Ohio Congressional District 15 debate that we host along with WOUB TV. I want to extend a very special welcome to our 2 candidates this evening, Steve Stivers and Rick Neal, as well as all of you in the audience, Ohio University students, faculty, staff, alumni, and of course we also have a number of community members here as well. Thank you all for attending this very important discussion. And now at this time I want to turn it over to Ohio University alumnus Joe Hallett, a retired Ohio newspaper reporter and moderator of tonight's debate. Joe?
Thank you, President Nellis. 15th Congressional District candidates Steve Stivers and Rick Neal are to be lauded for conducting civil and respectful campaigns so far. And tonight we ask our audience to do the same. It's okay to support your candidate with brief applause, but please refrain from vocally demonstrating support or disapproval of the candidate's responses. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for opening remarks, followed by 30 minutes of questioning by me. Candidates will be afforded 2 minutes each to answer questions, alternating which candidates answer first. Then it will be your turn. There are papers and pens, and we ask that you write questions so each candidate can answer them. Please hold your completed paper in the air so a volunteer can retrieve it. A coin flip has determined that Mr. Stivers will go first with opening remarks. Mr. Stivers?
Well, thank you, Joe, and I want to thank Ohio University, President Nellis, and all of you for being here today to be part of this. We're about a week away from Election Day, and the contrasts in this race are pretty bright. On health care, I'm for transparency of quality and price, and I've got a plan to reduce healthcare costs. That's why I've been endorsed by the Ohio State Medical Association, Ohio's doctors, and my opponent is for either Medicaid for all or Medicare for all or Medicare for folks 55 and up. Medicare for folks 55 and up would cost $1 trillion, bankrupt Medicare on day one. Medicare for all would also throw 179 million people off their private insurance. On taxes, my record of tax cuts and regulatory reform has resulted in economic growth. We have 4% economic growth, unemployment's at 3.7%, consumer confidence is at an all-time high, and income in this very district is up 8% year over year, according to the American Community Survey. That's why I've been endorsed by the United States Chamber of Commerce, the National Federation of Independent Business, and the Ohio Building Trades Unions. I think this race is about results versus rhetoric. I've also been very bipartisan. I've sponsored 18 bills, all with Democrat co-sponsors. 6 of my bills have become law, including bills to fight the opioid epidemic, help small business, help homeowners, and help veterans. I was ranked last year by the Lugar Center as the 37th most bipartisan member of Congress, and I've led on issues like civility, which we'll talk more about, and I've led to help college students. I see a lot of college students in in the audience, I've worked to help lessen the burden of student debt. I look forward to talking about that. I've led on financial literacy, and I've led on college transparency, which we'll talk more about. My record is clear. I'll keep being who I am and work hard to deliver for the people of the 15th District. Thanks for the honor to be with you tonight, and I look forward to this vigorous debate.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Mr. Neal, it's your turn.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be here tonight. Thank you, President Nellis, and to Ohio University. So good to see so many folks here. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks, everybody, for following along online. I thank you, Steve, also for coming to Athens. My name is Rick Neal. I'm the Democratic candidate for Congress here in Ohio's 15th District. Really proud to be running to help fix health care and to protect Social Security and to get our politics back on track. The district, of course, starts right here in Athens and spreads out over South Central Ohio, over to Wilmington and all the way up to Columbus, up the best district in the state. And I could not be, as I said, more proud to be running here. And as I've gone, throughout all 12 counties and spoken to thousands of people these last 15 months, one thing has become really clear. It's become clear just how much we've been left behind by our representative in Congress, by you, Steve. Left behind by your vote last year to get rid of the Affordable Care Act with nothing reasonable to put in its place. Left behind by the tax bill that you jammed through last year that was a giveaway of $1.5 trillion to the 1%, and now you want to pay for it by coming after Social Security and Medicare. And left behind literally when you left us and took a new job with your party in Washington to head up your party's reelection effort and to try to keep control of Congress. And that's not who I am. My whole life has been about helping people, about answering that call to service no matter where it takes me. I was a Peace Corps volunteer right out of college for 5 years and turned that into a career in public health, working with refugees in Asia and Africa. And even after I met my wonderful husband, Tom, and moved to Ohio to raise our 2 daughters, I sort of kept my ear to the ground. And 4 years ago, when the Ebola epidemic broke out, I went back to Africa and to help build a hospital. So it's that same spirit of coming together to stand up for each other and to help each other that I want to bring to work for you here in the 15th District, for better health care, to protect Social Security, and to get our politics back on track. I'm really, really proud to be here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. The first question goes to you.
All right.
As you know, the 14th Amendment conveys citizenship to any baby born on U.S. soil, regardless whether or not their parents are American citizens. Today, it was revealed that President Trump plans to sign an executive order to deny the right of citizenship to babies of non-citizens who are born on U.S. soil. Do you support or oppose changing this longstanding birthright citizenship, and why?
Thank you, Joe, for the question. I oppose it, but it's not really up to me, is it? It's up to the Constitution. I sort of had to, on the one hand, I sort of had to chuckle to myself this morning when I saw this news, right? It's like, well, there he goes again, just trying to get us all riled up and freaked out a week before the election, trying to, throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks. And immigration is really his go-to issue on this, isn't it? Demonizing people, slandering people, running people down, running his mouth a little too much, just to see what's going to happen. Can he get his base riled up to come out and vote, to save Steve's majority here next week? And it's shameful. I don't think the president obviously can do anything about, he can't just sign an executive order and overturn part of the Constitution. He can try, we'll see him in court. But I think the larger issue here, Joe, is that we can see what he's trying to do. Like I said, he's trying to use immigration to divide us when we do not have an immigration crisis in this country. The only crisis that we have is the one that he's manufacturing. This is really clearly, I think, seen in this story about the caravan. My goodness, we even had Shep Smith on Fox News last night saying, they're not coming, folks. Don't calm down a little bit. And I know something about this as a relief worker. I've worked on on migration for my whole career. And if I'm lucky enough to be in Congress, I think I would be able to stand up pretty clearly and strongly and say, this is not the way to help people. You know, uncontrolled migration like this is not good for anybody. It's not good for the migrants. It's not good for the host country. It's not good for the target country. So let's try to help people and not exploit their misery for our own political gain. Give support to Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico so that they can help the migrants. Call in the International Organization for Migration, which is a terrific organization and exists expressly for situations like this, to help migrants and keep people safe. So that's what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Stivers,
Thank you, Joe. I agree with my opponent that no executive order can change a constitutional provision. And I also do not believe that changing birthright citizenship is the right direction to go. I think on immigration, we do need to fix our immigration. It starts with securing the border. I believe we need to secure the border. That means manpower, that means technology, and in some cases that means a physical barrier. I believe we need to stop family separation at the border. I believe we need to give legal status to the so-called dreamers so that they can work and travel and serve our country in the military. And I believe we should fix our legal immigration system so that it actually helps us grow our economy. So I think there is a better way forward on immigration. I don't think we have to focus on the things that divide us. So I will, again, continue to do what I've done in Congress, and that's bring people together and get things done. I voted for an immigration package that did all those four things we talked about, and I hope we can work with Republicans and Democrats to get that package passed in the next Congress. Joe.
thank you. Next question for you, Mr. Stivers. Your party continually has promised to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Since Republicans took over government in Washington, they have accomplished a piecemeal dismantling of Obamacare, but we have yet to see a replacement. Meanwhile, millions of Americans lack health insurance, and popular planks of Obamacare, such as coverage for pre-existing conditions, appear threatened. What is the Republican health care plan? And Mr. Neal, when it's your turn, please explain your plans for health care.
Well, thanks, Joe. And, there's no one plan for healthcare, but I hope we can bring people together on what I support. And that's we need price transparency, we need quality transparency in healthcare, and we need to give consumers skin in the game. For people, the 700,000 Ohioans that traded some economic opportunity in exchange for a health care card to get Medicaid expansion, we need to change Medicaid expansion and the rules of Medicaid expansion to make it like what we did for people with disabilities, called Medicare buy-in. And as they make more, they pay a little more, but they don't lose their Medicaid as they actually do better financially. Unfortunately, today, the people on Medicaid expansion lose their Medicaid if they earn more than $16,174. I might be slightly off. But that is not an economic future, and we can't have people trade their economic future for a health care card. We've got to give people an opportunity to benefit from our economy. I think we need to cut prescription drug prices. I would do that by changing the Food and Drug Administration so that it becomes more collaborative instead of sitting across the table with your attorneys, actually sitting around a table with the folks who are trying to do innovation and try to figure out the right information. That's how they do it in Europe. It sped the process. In America, it takes 3 years and $3 billion to approve a drug. In Europe, it takes 18 months and $1 billion. So I think that will speed things up a lot. I also think drug companies shouldn't be allowed to advertise because I think that drives up the cost of drugs. I think there's a lot of things we can come together on. I led a bipartisan group that increased the amount of money people can put in a flexible spending account to help save people money in their out-of-pocket expenses, because millions of Americans today have health care coverage, but their out-of-pocket expenses are killing them. So I've talked too long about this. There is a way forward on health care. I think it's a less partisan way, and I hope we will focus on that and bring people together to get things done.
Mr. Neal?
Well, it sounds nice, doesn't it? And of course, Steve, what you failed to mention is especially talking about Medicaid expansion. That was surprising. You voted in May of 2017 as part of your effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act to get rid of Medicaid expansion in the state of Ohio. It would have gutted it. And you know, when I was out at a meeting about the Hocking Correctional Institute up the road outside of Nelsonville about the transition of that facility to a residential treatment facility for women, which is a critical part, has to be a critical part with medication-assisted treatment for our opioid crisis. You know, I raised my hand and I said, well, wait, how is this going to get paid for? What would happen if Medicaid expansion went away? And they said we'd be done. We wouldn't be able to do that project. And then just a few days later, when I was at Hocking Valley Community Hospital up in Logan, you know, I asked the same question. What would happen? They'd close their doors, one of the last independent hospitals, not just in the state, but in the country. You know, and you voted to get rid of that. What were you doing? I mean, it's good, you know, you come here and talk about what you want to do to help Medicaid expansion, but your voting record doesn't support that commitment. You know, and on pre-existing conditions, of course, it's the same thing. The vote in May of 2017 would have put coverage for pre-existing conditions at risk. So what we need to do is, instead of continuing this nonsense of attacking the Affordable Care Act with nothing reasonable to replace it, we need to fix it. We have a great opportunity in this election to elect a whole new host of Democrats, challengers like myself, first-time candidates like myself, who come from service backgrounds and who are committed to getting things done. And with the Affordable Care Act, that means stopping the sabotage and the chipping away at the bits and pieces. It means working with states to guarantee Medicaid expansion. It means passing legislation that guarantees coverage of pre-existing condition. And yes, it does mean looking at Medicare and opening that up so that people 55 and older can buy into it, and we don't have to listen to Steve scaremongering about $1 trillion in bankrupting, because obviously that's not what's going to happen.
Joe, can I respond to that?
Yeah, at my discretion, I can allow 30 seconds for a response.
Thanks, and I'll be pretty brief. The Columbus Dispatch called those claims on health care an exaggeration. Frankly, this facility was at the Hocking Correctional Institute in Nelsonville. When that was closing down, I led a community dialogue to come together, and I want to thank Ohio University for leading the effort to actually make that facility a treatment facility and a regional women's prison. Mr. President, thank you. You are indeed continuing to help drive the future. But the Columbus Dispatch called those claims an exaggeration. That's what you'll hear. Also, my opponent did not talk specifically about anything he would do to change healthcare other than the expanding Medicare.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stivers.
I did talk about 3 things, but I do have the Washington Post here saying why your claims here about that fact check is incorrect, Congressman.
Okay,
So there you
let's
go.
move on. Question for you, Mr. Neal. Do you support or oppose the overturning of the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision?
I oppose it. The Supreme Court has been clear about this. Our courts have been clear about it. Our communities have been clear about it. Roe versus Wade is settled law, and if we see any attempt by this new Supreme Court or any part of our court system to overturn it, we need to oppose it. The right to privacy is enshrined in our Constitution, and like I said, it's enshrined in our communities. There is support for Roe versus Wade. I will tell you, as a public health guy, I have a very, very clear position on this. We can reduce rates of abortion in this country by dealing with a lot of things, a lot of public health issues head on. Comprehensive sex education, comprehensive coverage and access to birth control, better laws around adoption and placing kids. Come on, if you want something that we can work together on, there it is. You know, but there's a lot of forces out there who really want to get people whipped up over this one. And it's dividing us, and it's keeping us from coming together and working on solutions and working on getting things toned down a little bit. So no, I would not support overturning it.
Mr. Stivers?
Well, thanks, Joe. I'm pro-life with exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. We have reduced abortion in this country. I do agree with my colleague that I think we can continue to reduce abortion without focusing on the things that divide us, but I am pro-life.
Thank you. This question for Mr. Stivers. You both mentioned civility in your opening remarks. It seems to be a big problem. Mr. Stivers, you often claim to virtually personify civility and bipartisanship in Congress, but some say that your claims are undermined by your position as chairman of the Republican National Campaign Committee. That job requires you to raise millions of dollars, and much of that money is used to finance some pretty awful attack ads, many of them determined by independent fact checkers to make false and misleading claims. There seems to be a kind of a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde relationship between your claim and what you do as chairman. And Mr. Neal, you recently made a volatile charge that Mr. Stivers approved campaign commercials that, quote, traffic in anti-Semitism. What justification do you have for that? Mr. Stivers, go first, please.
Well, thank you so much. Joe, my peers did ask me to take on a role as chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. That gives me a chance to sit at the leadership table, not just about campaigns, but about policy, which gives me a bigger megaphone to get things done for the people of Ohio, the people of the 15th District, and America. And it's mostly an oversight role, an administrative role. I do participate in raising funds. Our independent expenditure arm cuts off in April of this year, and I can't coordinate with them on what they do, but I've asked them to make sure the ads are true and make sure the ads are fair. I placed a non-Washingtonian, a non-DC person in charge of our independent expenditure, a person from Ohio that I've known for 25 years, because I trust that he will do the best he can. Campaigns are going to be contrasts, Joe. That's why we're here today. When you agree, it doesn't really give the voters an easy choice. And there are big contrasts in the visions of our parties, our candidates, and even tonight between us. So that is always how it has been. That's probably how it will be. But I've tried to bring some sanity to that role. I think I've done a decent job, but that's up for the people to decide. And I want to quickly mention that the ad that my challenger mentions doesn't even talk about religion. So I'm not sure. I'm interested to hear his charge, because the Columbus Dispatch called that claim dubious as well, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
Thanks for the opportunity to clear the air. Obviously, a lot to unpack here in terms of civility and who's saying what. About that ad, or about the video that I made yesterday, and about what happened this weekend. Boy, we've had a tough week as a country, haven't we? And, as we're talking about this, if we could just keep in mind what happened last week and what happened on Saturday, the worst attack on the American Jewish community in our history. It was dreadful. And, when I watched you, Steve, on Sunday morning, on the talk shows, they were handing you an opportunity about this ad, that you've run, that the NRCC has run against a congressional candidate in Minnesota. He handed you an opportunity to just, back off a little bit. And you know what you could have done? You could have just muted it for a couple days, right? You could have replaced it with something else. You could have just run something else. But you had to double down, didn't you? And it's too bad. So the ad that we're talking about is running in Minnesota, and it uses, when I said it traffics in anti-Semitism, it does. The Anti-Defamation League itself, the Jewish Anti-Defamation League, has explained how some of the imagery that's used in the ad about George Soros, a billionaire donor to democratic causes and liberal causes, has explained how those images are anti-Semitic triggers, right? And it just seemed really sad and inappropriate for you to be running those ads, right on the weekend that this happened. So we called you out for it, and the Dispatch pushed back a little bit, but I still think that it was too bad. And as far as civility is concerned, this is where the rubber meets the road, right? And if civility just means good manners and everybody's sort of keeping quiet and going along to get along, in this day and age, that sounds more like complicity. And if standing up, I got to say, standing up and speaking out and pushing back, even when that gets a little heated, right? And even when we end up marching in the streets because we disagree so strongly about what's going on, that's not incivility. When you're standing up for your democracy, that's patriotism.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. The next question to you, Mr. Neal. If you win and Democrats control the House, will you vote to impeach President Trump or Justice Kavanaugh if such resolutions reach the floor? Also, would you support Nancy Pelosi as Speaker? And Mr. Stivers, what advice would you give to President Trump for setting an example from the top in civility for all of us?
Joe's bringing the tough questions, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, these are big questions, and it's weighty time. So, look, in terms of impeachment, well, actually, for both questions, Joe, and I'm sorry if this sounds, it depends, right? I mean, this is a big deal. This is a big deal what we're talking about. I mean, impeaching the president, I certainly think, that we might find out in the new Congress that there certainly is room for hearings, for Congress to start doing its job as a co-equal branch of government, to push back, to act as a check on the executive, right? Holding hearings about what's going on. You know, I just thought of this just the other day when we found out that the president is still using his personal cell phone that you can tap into. I think that warrants some hearings about the president's, phone habits, right? We might move to censuring the president, which is a very big deal if that's where the evidence leads. And, I think that the best solution, the most sustainable solution for our country is not impeachment. I think it's going to the ballot box in 2020 and letting people decide. But if Robert Mueller comes forward with charges, what is the House supposed to do? Say no? Again, we're not going to do our job? That doesn't sound right. And I think it would be the same for Justice Kavanaugh. As far as Leader Pelosi is concerned, I've been pretty clear. I was clear about this in my endorsement interview with the Columbus Dispatch. I will support the candidate for Speaker who is best positioned to enact a legislative agenda that will help folks here in the 15th District.
Mr. Stivers?
Thank you. I have not always agreed with the way the president treats people. I've spoken up. I spoke up on the first Muslim ban. I spoke up on his comments on Charlottesville. I've spoken up on family separation and got the policy changed. And my advice for the president is treat people the way you want to be treated.
Thank you.
Have you said that to him?
Mr. Stivers, this question to you. The 15th Congressional District before the last census was arguably the most competitive and compact district in Ohio. But it now stretches all the way from Plain City on the north down to Athens here in the south. Like almost all of Ohio's 16 congressional districts, it makes no geographic sense. In fact, the districts are examples of extreme gerrymandering in an otherwise even, politically even state. The typical margin of victory in the 12 Republican districts and 4 Democratic districts is 30 percentage points or more. Ohio's districts will be redrawn in 2021 following the next federal census. What are you willing to do, both of you personally, to make sure Ohio gets rational, sensible districts for the 2022 election cycle?
Thanks, Joe. And I've already done something. I was one of the co-chairs of State Issue 1 that 70% of Ohio's citizens voted for, or voters voted for, last 2 years ago. And that's last year, it's going to change the way that we draw our lines, and it's going to make them more bipartisan. I think it'll be an improvement. Nothing is perfect. You can't take politics out of a completely political decision, but requiring Republicans and Democrats to come together on the lines, I think will give us more fair districts. And Joyce Beatty and I inserted ourselves when it looked like those talks in the legislature were going to break down, and we talked to the legislative leaders over a weekend. They came back together, Republicans and Democrats got a compromise, and then Joyce and I and the Senate President and the Senate Minority Leader were the co-chairs of the Issue 1 campaign, honorary co-chairs, supporting it, and I think it will help. Thanks, Joe.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you. Steve, I was wondering if you were going to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about Athens and it being in your district after your comments back in January at the Columbus Athletic Club. You know, gerrymandering is such an interesting conversation for this district, and it was heightened last year or earlier this year. So, in case you missed it, the congressman got a question about gerrymandering up at the Columbus Metropolitan Club, and he was sort of joking around, and he said, well, they drew the lines and I got everything that was left. And then he said, well, and I didn't want Athens, believe me. My goodness. Like I've said, I couldn't be more proud than to be running to represent everyone in this district, no matter where you live. And the point is that we're going to come to a point, if I'm lucky enough to be elected to be your representative, unfortunately, it does look like I'm going to have to come back to people in maybe before 2020, if this court case goes through that's in federal court, and maybe in 2021, and explain to folks, it's going to break my heart, but I live up in Columbus. I don't live down here. And, if I'm the representative of the 15th, I'm going to have to, it looks like, I'll get redistricted out, and I'll have to let it go. I love every part of this district. It has been amazing to go around and meet so many terrific people, and I see some of you here from the farthest reaches of the district. But it's what people want. People here in the Appalachian counties of this district are really, really frustrated at not having strong representation in Congress, feeling like they're left out. And so certainly it is my commitment to do everything that I can to make sure that everyone in this district has the representation that they want, even if that means that I can't be your representative.
Joe, since I was attacked, I'd really like to respond quickly. I did make lighthearted comments at a Columbus Metropolitan Club event, and I apologize. It was not intended to hurt anybody's feelings. It was intended to be a joke, and Rick has traipsed it out all throughout Southeast Ohio. I'm honored to represent Southeast Ohio. I grew up in Appalachia in Brown County in Southwest Ohio, but I know what it's like down here, and the things I've done have made a difference for folks down here. Look at the unemployment rate, even in Athens, has come down 3 percentage points as a result of the policies we've made. The unemployment's come down 5% in Hocking County. It's come down 7% in Morgan County, 7% in Vinton County, and 7% in Perry County. People's lives have been changed by the policies we've enacted for the better. And I care about this district, and I work hard to represent this district, and I will continue to work hard every day to make you proud.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Mr. Neal, the next question for you. The simple truth is that Social Security and Medicare are not sustainable unless revisions are made. Blame it on the tax cut, on an aging America, or whatever. Experts agree that hard decisions are needed to make both programs solvent for future generations. Toward that end, would you support raising the retirement age and the withholding tax to save Social Security? And if you support a Medicare for all healthcare system, how would you pay for it?
Thank you. So just a question for me. Thank
He'll
you.
get his
All right, I bet. So, no, I would not support raising the retirement age, and I do not support cutting benefits. Part of my campaign that I talk about all along is that I am running for Congress to protect Social Security. And the reason that this has become so important, of course, this year is because this tax giveaway that Steve jammed through last year, $1.5 trillion, $1.5 trillion on the national credit card, a tax giveaway to the 1%, and now, oh my goodness, we have this fiscal crisis that we have to get under control, and what are we going to do? Well, we have to come after Social Security and Medicare. And you see what they're doing when you listen to them talk about it, when you listen to Steve talk about it. He talks about entitlements. It's not an entitlement. It's an earned benefit that we pay into. And 10 days ago at our first debate in Columbus, he rolled out this idea that actually Social Security isn't a retirement plan at all, but a social safety net program. Do you see what's happening? What happens to social safety net programs in this country? They get shredded. Retirement plans, a Social Security is a retirement plan that we pay into so that we'll have the money that we need when we're older for a dignified and secure retirement. And that is not going to change in a Democratic-controlled Congress. Now, how do we make it solvent? And Steve, you agree with this? You said so last time. There's a cap on how much people pay. There's a cap on their income. After a certain point, above, what is it, $118,000 or $124,000, you don't pay tax. You don't pay a tax into Social Security. Well, we got to get rid of that cap. And that's what's going to help. As far as Medicare is concerned, opening up Medicare is the way to help shift risk in our insurance companies. That's why it's not a benefit. It's allowing folks 55 and older to buy in to Medicare, right? Shift that risk from those folks 55 and 65, the oldest and the least healthy in the exchanges, and they, on Medicare for 55 and up, they become the youngest and the most healthy, and it helps spread out the risk, and it reduces cost.
Thank you, Mr. Neal.
Thanks.
Mr. Stivers?
Sorry for going on too long.
Thank you. With regard to Medicare and Social Security, we need to come together the way Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did. We need to come together as Republicans and Democrats and find solutions. And we can't let our seniors down because if, by the way, there's a bunch of young people in the room. I'll give you an interesting fact. More people in your age group in college believe in UFOs than believe that Social Security will be there when you retire. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I know it's true. We have to do something about it, and we got to sustain the program. And I've said that I'm willing to raise the cap, not do away with the cap on earnings, and I'm willing to cut benefits for people that are millionaires and billionaires because, frankly, that will save us money, and that is the way Social Security is intended. It is not a retirement plan, and, you know, you can't make it a retirement plan today. It never was intended as one. It is an important retirement safety net for millions and millions of Americans, and if we do nothing or do Rick's plan, it will go bankrupt. We can't let it go bankrupt. We have to work together as Republicans and Democrats. I know there's a lot of vitriol. It's 7 days before an election, but we've got to work together to fix it. And $1 trillion cost to put people 55 and over on Medicare would increase everybody's taxes by 33%, and then you're going to pay for Social Security on top of that. That's going to be a giant tax increase in America, and I think we've got to be smart about the way we do this, come together and do it as Republicans and Democrats in a bipartisan manner. That's the only way we can fix our social safety programs, and so I hope we can do that. I'm going to work hard to do it. I've got a record of doing just that, and that's what I'll do if you send me back to Congress.
Joe, just real quick. So, I got to tell you, after I was surprised by this $1 trillion price tag, and Steve, I made a good effort. I looked everywhere. Where did you get that figure from? The bill, the Medicare for 55 and up has not been scored, and so I don't know what you're talking about.
Been scored by independent groups. I'll get it to you.
Please do, because, you know, until then, really, I mean, just more scaremongering, just
Thank
more
you.
fear-mongering
Thank you.
to say that we can't do it, but we can do it.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Now we'll turn to audience questions.
Already?
We have one from Faith Knutson. In the current highly divisive national climate, what is your personal vision about national cohesion, and what have you done to reach that vision? If possible, please answer this without referring to your opponent or to others. This is about you and your visions and actions. Please also focus on our nation, not on outside forces. My question is about your perspective on our American civic discourse and how Americans are relating to other Americans in the current day. I believe it's your turn, Mr. Stivers.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate this question, and I've led on this issue. I believe that our public discourse is fractured. I believe that our social fabric has been torn by the divisions in this country, and some people want to blame it one place or another. It's not about blame. It's about how we fix it, and we fix it by coming together. I've led by example on that. I'm ranked by the Lugar Institute as the 37th most bipartisan member of Congress. Every bill I've sponsored has a Democratic co-sponsor. I've been effective. I've gotten 6 of my 18 bills that I currently sponsor passed, but I've led on issues like civility. Joyce Beatty and I put together a civility caucus in Congress. We've gotten 32 of our colleagues to join. You have to join as a Republican and a Democrat together. And when you join, you have to go to each other's district and talk to each other's constituents about why civility matters and what civility means. And civility does not mean being nice. It means trying to figure out how to disagree without being disagreeable and getting to the hard conversations. Because civility is, has a Greek root in the word civil, and that's how we work together and talk together. And God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we should act accordingly, in my opinion, and try to listen to each other and learn from each other. I've tried to do that in the way I govern. I've tried to do that in the way I lead on issues like civility. And, given the earlier question, I can't make campaigns perfect or, avoid campaigns getting some contrast, because that's what campaigns are about. But when we're governing, we've got to work together, and I've got a record of doing it, and I will keep doing it, and I'll keep leading on this issue because I believe it's really important. And I'll stand up to anybody, and I have. But I also know that it's about how we work together and how we listen to each other, and I'll listen to anybody too. And that's the other important thing. Thank you very much, and I appreciate
Thank you,
the question.
Mr. Stivers. Mr. Neal?
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Faith, for the question. I lead by example. My career was overseas in humanitarian relief. And I got to tell you, the thing about humanitarian relief is that it is a very practical and very collaborative field. I was very lucky to have the opportunity to work, like I said, overseas for 7 years in Asia and Africa to run public health programs with refugees. And, every once in a while, you'd wake up in the morning and 1,000 women and children had come into town overnight, forced to abandon their homes and their livelihoods because of war, violence, fear, or persecution. Well, you had to get going, right? Women and children, they need a place to stay. You got to take care of them. So my specialty was water and sanitation. You get together with the people doing food. You get together with the people doing shelter. You get together with the people doing medical care, and you figure it out. And not once was there ever a discussion like, oh, well, I'm not going to work with that guy over there because I don't agree with his politics. Or I'm not going to work with that agency over there because we don't share the same religion. No, we were humanitarians. We had a mission to save lives and get people back on their feet and get people home. It's that same spirit. This is one of the biggest reasons why I'm qualified to be your representative in Congress, because I will bring that same spirit of practical collaboration to all of our issues. And the thing is about coming together. I've been thinking about this a lot. It's not just enough for, the most powerful people in the room who are supporting the kind of attacks that are coming out from Donald Trump or are enabling him. It's not enough for them to say, well, we got to come together now, right? No. The way that we come together is we stop enabling Donald Trump. We stop enabling the hate, the vitriol, the personal attacks. We say no. We stand up. We speak out. And that's what I'm doing running for Congress. I'm speaking out. I'm standing up for myself, for my family, for my community, for you, for all of us. That's how we come together.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. This question is from Connie Patterson. What do you see as the assets of Southeast Ohio portion of the 15th District? How have you or will you leverage and advocate for this portion of your district?
His turn to go first.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
sure.
sorry.
Thank you.
But I'll go first if you want.
No, that's okay. It's his turn.
Thanks. This is a great question. Several months ago, I had the chance to come down to participate in a symposium here at OU, and that's where I had met a bunch of people in this room. And it was the neatest thing. It was a symposium on social entrepreneurship and on how do we unleash the innovation that's all latent here in Southeast Ohio. And that I came away from that with an amazing sense of how much potential there is here on so many things. And I'll talk particularly about the potential that this part of the district and about Southeast Ohio has to be a leader in innovation as we move forward into the new economy that's coming. There's going to be a tremendous amount of change, a tremendous amount of disruption. in American life and in our economy over these next 10 to 15 years because of transitions in energy and transitions in information, automation, artificial intelligence. It's coming. It is really going to disrupt a lot of things. But here in Appalachia, there's a chance to lead the way because of all the entrepreneurial energy that's here and because of all the need that's here. You know, so it's to take advantage, to invest in new energy infrastructure, to invest in renewable energy and help communities. This was the big phrase that I learned from that symposium. My commitment is to helping all of our communities make a fair and just transition to the new economy that's coming. It is such a great opportunity, and it is so exciting, and it's gonna start here. That's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to have this part of the state in the district, because you're gonna lead the way, and I really wanna be there to help you.
Thank you. Mr. Stivers?
Thanks, Joe, and I want to thank the person who asked this question. This area of the state has unique resources. It has natural resources, coal, natural gas, a lot of now new renewable energy that is happening down here. It has hardworking people, and one of the other assets is Ohio University. That's a big deal in Southeast Ohio. There are needs down here, and you know, Rick did talk about the information economy. We are already in an information economy, but it's going to accentuate. If we don't solve the problem of rural broadband, we will have a problem of the haves in the urban and suburban communities and the have-nots in rural America, including Southeast Ohio. We have to solve the problem. I've got working groups from all over my district on rural broadband. And there's companies like IntelliWave right here in Athens that are making a difference for rural communities. But there's more we can do. I signed a letter to the FCC last year to help rural broadband happen on the white space between channels. Remember when we had analog TVs and they put space between the channels? You know, in Cincinnati when I grew up, it was Channel 5 and Channel 9 and Channel 12, and in Columbus it's Channel 12 and Channel 6 and Channel 10. But the white space between can be used to send a long-range wireless signal that's a big, big deal, UHF, that goes much further than some of the short-range FM, and it's a disruptive technology. We need to focus on disruptive technologies that can help places like Southeast Ohio. We need to focus on the new natural gas economy. There's pipelines going in all over this district, and there's going to be cheap, affordable energy that can bring manufacturing back to Southeast Ohio. We need to focus on rural broadband so the information economy and the smart economy can come and stay in Southeast Ohio. And I'm excited about that. So Ohio University is one of the key leverage points, and I'm going to be working with President Nellis. I appreciate what you did at Nelsonville for the Hocking Correctional Institute, and you're going to help us do the same thing on rural broadband and the new energy economy. I look forward to working with you on it if I'm reelected to Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. This from Laura Myers. Do you support broad federal protection against discrimination of LGBT people, including areas such as employment, housing, and eligibility to foster and adopt children? Mr. Stivers?
Thank you for the question. And I do think that everybody should be protected. And I think, you know, I've got a record of trying to support everybody. In fact, I was one of only 4 Republicans who voted against the Defense of Marriage Act in the state Senate. I think there are some bills in Congress today that have proposed some of this stuff. Some of them are very wide-ranging. I would support most of what is in those bills, but there are some things that I think we need to continue to look at. There are some questions that are illegal for an interviewer to ask, and so the question is, how do you provide a protection for something that's illegal for the interviewer to ask? I'm open to it and want to look into it. I will continue to dig in to some of those legal questions, but I do think that everybody deserves protection, and I think that whether you are in the LGBT community or any community, you should be able to adopt children, have employment, have housing. And so I look forward to continuing to look and work on these issues, and hopefully we can all come together to make sure everybody feels safe and secure in our country and feels like they're not being attacked.
Mr. Neal?
You know what? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, and Joe, I'm sorry. This makes me a little mad. All right? Steve, that was a misrepresentation, just about everything that you said. All right? The Human Rights Campaign is the national advocacy organization for lesbians, gays, bisexual, and transgender people. They put out a legislative scorecard every Congress. And for every Congress that Steve Stivers has been in, since he got elected in 2010 and went in 2011, he has gotten a 0 every time, including their most recent scorecard that came out on October 20th. And I cannot tell you how disappointed and angry I am that that's the case, Steve. A 0, you have to work to get a 0. Even Pat Tiberi didn't have a 0. You know who has a 0 in Ohio? Jim Jordan has a 0. For crying out loud. There is a law, there is a bill that's been in Congress for years, the Equality Act. The Equality Act would make it illegal in the United States to discriminate in employment or housing based on sexual orientation and gender identity. It surprises a lot of people to know that that's still allowed. It's still allowed in Ohio. There are only 27% of people in Ohio who live in municipalities that have such protections. If I do one thing, it will be to get those protections passed. My husband and I had to fight to get our marriage recognized by the state of Ohio after the terrible 2004 Issue 1 campaign, where people decided that we didn't deserve equal protection under the law. And so when I moved to Ohio and we got married, that marriage wasn't recognized. And when we went to adopt our kids, we decided that only one of us could be the legal parent, and that was going to be Tom. And so we had to cobble together a legal arrangement so that I could have a legal relationship with my own children. You know, and I was the one who was staying at home doing their hair and changing diapers, so it really wasn't fair, right? So listen, we fought and we won that fight. And we got marriage equality. And I was the first person in Franklin County to go back to the probate court and file my petition so that I could be recognized as the legal father of my own kids,
Mr.
right?
Neal.
No, I'm sorry, Joe. I know we've got to finish this up. But, ladies and gentlemen, a 0 rating for every term that he's been in Congress on LGBT non-discrimination.
Mr.
0.
Stivers, do you want to
Well,
respond?
I can't speak to somebody's scorecard that I don't know what's on it.
You know
but
exactly what's
I can
on it,
tell
Steve.
you that,
Come on, you court the HRC votes
is a fact.
all the time.
It is a fact that I voted against the Defense of Marriage Act. That is a fact.
That was,
it is a
when
fact
was that? That was
That I
14 years ago.
It is a fact that I supported the ban on Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I'll put my record up. I think I've been fair and I'll be fair. I don't know the Equality Act, but I will look at it.
Okay,
So
thank you. Do we have time for one
Have
more?
you ever seen such
Nope.
an example of an
No.
elected official blowing smoke to
Okay.
cover up a shameful position? My goodness.
On that note, it's time to quit. That does conclude our debate tonight. Thank you, President Nellis, and Ohio University for hosting, and to the candidates for their commitment to public service. And thank you for coming out. It has been a joy for me to return to Ohio University, where I spent 4 of the best years of my life. I only wish I could remember them. Please drive safely when you go home. Thank you.
Thank you. May we wrap up?
So no closing statement?
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I messed up. I haven't done this for a long time. We have closing statements. And
It's up
Mr.
to
Neal,
you. Actually, I go second.
okay.
Well, does he go second on everything? Is that on
That's
both
how-
opening and closing? Is that how the coin toss works?
Right.
Okay. Is that how it worked? All right, I guess so. All
My
right, well,
apologies.
That's all right. Thanks, Joe. I want to thank Ohio University. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Rick for being here. There are bright lines in this district. There are bright lines, contrasts in this race. I think I have a record of accomplishment. I've focused on economic growth. With our tax and regulatory changes, you've gotten it. The economy is growing at 4%. Unemployment is 3.7%. Consumer confidence at an all-time high. Unemployment in these southeast Ohio counties has gone down on average by 4% many counties by 5%. We're making a difference for people. There's more work to be done. I look forward to doing it, and I will try to represent you in a manner that makes you proud. I've also delivered for Southeast Ohio. I've gotten over $800,000 of grants. I've helped
Thank
the
you.
Hocking Correctional Institute. I've helped Vinton County get a grocery store. I'll continue to try to make a difference if I'm reelected.
Thank you, Mr. Stivers. Neal?
All right, I'll try to lighten up here a little bit. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Steve. Thanks to OU and to everyone who came out tonight and following along online. I could not be more proud. I could not be more proud than to be running to represent everyone in this district, no matter who you vote for, no matter where you live, no matter how much money you have. We have an amazing opportunity in this election to fix healthcare and to protect Social Security and to get our politics back on track. But to realize that potential, we have to get out and vote for change, to elect folks like me who are in it to help people. This week was a tough one. Last week was a tough one for our country. And it sure seems like a lot of times like nothing is as it should be. But we have a chance now next week to vote
Thank
in
you.
this election to get our balance back
Thank you,
and to
Mr.
find
Neal.
firmer footing. And I'm very proud to be asking for your vote. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be
you.
here. Thank you.
So, what I said before I screwed up. So, please drive safely on your way home. Thank you. Hey, my pleasure.